All right, welcome to season 2, episode 9. We are doing a deep dive into Gastonia, the old sun drop bottling facility.
Yes.
So, Levi, I wasn't on board when this project came about. Can you give us some insights into like how we heard about this deal, how it came about,
Yeah.
and all the details there?
Yeah. So thanks for having me on the podcast.
Yeah, for
I am
sure.
not Cameron, as you can see. But yeah, super excited. This is going to be fun. So Gastonia was a really interesting project from the start. So we had another group brought us the project. They were working with the seller and they were saying, "Hey, we've got this project we're looking at." They weren't self-storage developers. And so they were multifamily guys. So they were kind of looking at the building of how they could cut it up into some townhomes, multifamily. They were trying to reuse this building, and it was super,
Yeah.
super choppy. So I remember the first call we got. We were actually down in Macon doing a site visit,
Oh, really?
and they called us and said, "Hey, we got this interesting project in Gastonia, and it's really, really choppy." And the guy just kept saying, "I think it would be a really good fit for storage. I think it would be a good fit for storage." And we're like, "Okay, well, we'll go check it out."
Yeah.
Our interest was piqued.
Yeah, for sure.
And he's like, "It's an old sun drop bottling facility." And we're like,
Yeah.
"All right, we're definitely
Yeah.
interested now, right?"
We like the cool stuff.
Yeah, we like the cool
Yeah.
stuff. Like, who doesn't want to take an old sun drop facility and do something with it?
Yeah,
you
and
know?
that wouldn't have worked for multifamily. Just
It
looking at
wouldn't
it objectively, like I just don't see how
It
that
would have
would've-
been. I mean, it would have been super, super choppy.
Yeah.
Like, and you could have played into the building maybe, but I don't think.
Yeah, you would have had to probably add like a whole mezzanine throughout the whole thing for it to pencil,
Yeah.
and that would have been a whole thing.
Yeah, so when we did our first initial visit there, we were we met this other group there, and meanwhile walking, like our kind of creative hats were on, and it was like, what can we do? We were kind of still exploring multifamily, right?
Yeah.
Kind of hearing their ideas. We brought the GC background. They're not GCs, and so they were kind of picking our brain about sewer taps and
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. Like, and so anyways, the first site visit that we went there, the broker said, "Hey, they're still active in this facility. Like they're still doing stuff. They weren't bottling, but they were using it as storage."
Oh, okay.
And so I'll never forget, we walked in the doors and there was probably 300 Sundrop vending machines in the main room there.
Really?
Like when you came off the side
Yeah.
street there, like we opened the door, I was like, "Oh, this
Wow.
is a Sundrop facility." Like
Yeah.
they had vending machines everywhere. It was
Really?
crazy. So we're all like looking at each other like, I've never seen that many vending machines in my
Yeah.
life. It was crazy. So anyways, the building was just packed full. Like it was really hard to kind of see see what the space could be because it was so full of like they had vending machines. They had
Yeah.
a lot of old bottling equipment there wasn't in active use. They had already moved to their another facility on the other side of Charlotte.
Okay.
And then a mixture of that was the owner. It had been in this family for, I think, 2 generations, maybe 3. So they had kind of just accumulated, like, just imagine every little corner where they could
Right.
fit, just storage stuff, really,
It's like
trinkets.
miscellaneous parts and
Miscellaneous parts, yeah. So the upstairs, parts. The upstairs where we added the mezzanine, or we didn't add the mezzanine, but we have units upstairs. That used to be their parts room. So like they
Was
had
it parts for like vending machines or
it was parts for most of their parts, I think, and what he told us was a lot of the bottling equipment.
Okay.
So they had like all these belts, they had screws. I mean, there was
just stuff everywhere?
hundreds of belts, hundreds of screws. I mean, it was like if any machine went down on that whole building, he's like, we have every part to rebuild every machine.
Wow.
Like,
When I walked in there, it was empty. So
Yeah.
it's hard to visualize it packed full of stuff because I
Yeah.
walked in and it was dark. It was like crazy quiet and just completely empty.
yeah, it was not that way when we walked it
Yeah.
the first time. So, yeah, our first site visit was, we really had to put our creative hats on, and it really screamed the location. It's right on Franklin Boulevard, which is like
Yeah.
the main road that goes through Gastonia. It goes right into the heart of Charlotte and right to the airport. So, like,
Yeah.
if you go out our door and you stay on that road through Charlotte, you're going to run into the airport. So, like,
That's a great location.
yeah, the location was awesome. The building was super choppy, but again, it really, I think, lent itself to the creativeness of storage, and we could kind of modify some of the storage units to kind
Yeah.
of fit these weird areas.
And it's only like 5 minutes from downtown Gastonia.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
it's-
again, the location was
yeah.
just
Probably less, to be honest.
It's right there. I
Yeah.
mean, it's right there. So we
I
like
stayed in that hotel, the Esquire Hotel, probably 10 times. You remember my office setup? I took the
Yeah.
ironing board and I put my computer up there. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot of site visits for that
Yeah.
one. That was
So
a good one.
that's interesting. Like, if you think about Gastonia, so like we were already going on the project. Like we'd already started the project when you came on board with
Yeah.
us, right? So
Right.
like I'm flipping the script now. I'm asking you
Right.
the question. Like, what was that like as you just started with us? Because I remember your first project that you were helping button up was Danville.
Yeah.
And you were doing punch list there with John. You were kind of
Yep.
working through that stuff. And then it was like, hey, we're going on Gastonia. Like, you weren't involved in the initial planning phase and the permitting phase. We had like already started demo, I think. And
Not really, yeah.
Really?
So when I started, Danville was like 95% done. So I was
Yeah.
helping with punch list stuff on that. And then I kept hearing about this Gastonia project, Gastonia, this and that. And then finally I was given the plans that I don't know when they were developed, but
Sorry.
the plans came in to me in an email and said, well, let's get this project going too. And I was like, do we own it? Like what, like where is it at? It's like, oh no, it's ready to start construction. And I was like, all right, great. Like, let's do it. And I remember taking a site visit up there and, you know, wasn't that many people there. I think it was just me and John. We opened the doors. It's just a dark, cold building. And I have these set of plans and they were, you know, good, decent plans, but
Yeah.
I could tell there was flow things that weren't fully developed and all that kind of stuff. So it was nice to be given a project. Like, you want to own something when you start with a new company, you want to be like, let me show you what I can
Sure.
do. Right.
Yeah.
So it was nice to have that project. We're like, all right, let me get started. But I wasn't involved in the design or where the office was located or a lot of the MEPs and that kind of stuff. So, you know, I had to read these plans and like, okay, I guess this is what we're building. Let's go ahead and build
Let's
it.
build it. Yeah. But I mean, like, so there's obviously, like, since then, obviously you've taken every project over. You're involved heavily in the start of the projects. Like, how much more of a, like, how much better do you feel when you see the building for the first time and you're on those initial calls with the architects, with the engineers, versus at Gastonia where it's like, hey, here's the plans, here's the building, here's the budget, like, let's build this thing out. Like, how much more confidence does that give you in your role to take a project from the true start?
Yeah. So it's night and day difference. And it's under 2 years, technically. It's you know, I've been with Elm Builders for a year and 11 months now. So the amount of transformation that happened in 2 years is incredible. So we have pre-construction checklist that is roughly like 140 items long that we go through so that the office location is laid out and we all agreed upon. We have renderings. We have the desired unit count, the mix, all that kind of stuff is already figured out and set in stone when we walk on a job site to start. Like day one, if we're starting demo, like all that stuff has already been figured out. Yeah. Mechanical, electrical, plumbing, all the locations, the kinds of equipment, all that stuff is figured out. Color schemes, like down to what color we're using. So from then to now, we don't even feel like the same company. And technically we're not. Like, now we're unlimited license in South Carolina and North Carolina. So it's evolved substantially. So the confidence now to where I felt before, the confidence now is it's night and day. Yeah. Like I'll never roll open a door and just be like, where do I start? Like, I already, you know, and we not only do we have like that pre-construction checklist, but we have countless other things that we've implemented, like 360 walks, where we literally walk the outside in 360 degrees and the inside 360 degrees. We take down all our notes, then we have a 360 recap meeting where we say, hey, there was some ambiguity here. Let's flush this out now, and we'll decide. You know, it's like the lack of decisiveness is what slows down a project. So if you can figure out all these things, of course there's going to be some sort of swaying and evolving based on like demo and that kind of stuff. I always say,
just due to conversions, right?
Yeah, exactly. Conversions are just tricky. It's not like building ground up. So there's still, it's not perfect, right? But the confidence, the you know, the plan is there. And so when you've got a plan that's developed 90%, it gives you that sway. But when you have a plan that's developed maybe 20-30%, it's like, okay, you're constantly picking this up and, you know, trying to bring things up to speed that were left behind, and that's hard because, you know, job site's all about momentum. Yeah,
absolutely.
And to talk
it's
about,
like a train, right? It takes a while to get going, but like on those checklists and everything, I feel like we've started moving the train earlier in the process, right? It's like, hey, as soon as we can start to get this train moving, by the time we close and by the time we're ready to start swinging a hammer, like we've already got serious momentum. And that's, in my mind, that's been probably one of the biggest shifts in Elm Builders. Yeah. And especially with you and your role of, hey, taking that, you know, from, hey, here's Gastonia to now it's like, hey, we're already getting the ball rolling on our pipeline projects. You know?
Yeah. Not only are we moving the train earlier, but we've got more horsepower because we're deciding, and these plans.
And it's actually in the right direction.
Yeah. We're going
we're on the right tracks.
Yeah. So we're figuring out all that stuff. We're not perfect, but there's so many things that we implemented that will never go back. You know, like we'll never not do our 360 walks, right? And the 360 walk actually came about from a project that we didn't end up going forward on.
Yep.
So
I remember that.
even entertaining projects and doing due diligence, you still can learn and implement from every project, whether you do that project or not. Some of the best
100%.
projects that you do are the ones that you don't do.
100%. Yeah.
So I think that was super important.
Yeah.
But talking about momentum and getting a project going, I have to mention the fact that there was a very hard stop for Gastonia.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry about that. So we bring Ryan on board. We're like, hey, we had full confidence in you from day one, just so you know, right? We're like, this guy's the guy. We're just gonna hand him it. He's just gonna knock this thing out of the park, and you have absolutely done that. But so we bring Ryan on. Hey, Gastonia is next on the pipeline. Let's get things moving there. It was probably like 2 months into construction, if that. We started demo. We started getting the stuff out there, and we had a full job site shutdown due to lack of the correct permits in place. And I take full responsibility for this because at the time I was running I was in that seat and trying to do a lot of different things, and I was working with John on the permitting. And so we didn't realize that Gastonia, we'd gotten our permits from the city, but the city never told us, hey, make sure you get your permits from Gaston County.
Yes.
They just never mentioned that. It's nowhere on their websites, nowhere on the permitting things. And again, we should have double checked. We should have had checklists. We should have had these things. So we hand Ryan this project. Hey, here you go. Let's rock and roll. He starts going in. 2 months into the project, he comes into my office. Actually, we were sharing an office at the time. Yeah, we were sharing an office at the time. And comes in and it's like, we're shut down at Gastonia.
Yeah, I remember how red my face was.
Your face was red. I was like, okay, what are we going to do?
Yeah, you were so calm. And I was just like, again, it's my first project. I want it to be on schedule, on budget, all those kinds of things. And yeah, just the impact of that, I think was the train was off the tracks. Putting it straight. Yeah. So, in all seriousness that it was, we were able to still do some work with the building department's approval. Obviously, after that initial shock, we asked them, hey, what can we do? Okay, we can do the roof because that's a maintenance item. It's leaking. We need to fix that. We could patch the concrete floor. We can still make progress, right? I think that's the biggest thing, is not letting that stuff really set you too far back. It's construction, stuff's going to happen, but just mentally you can't let it just totally destroy you.
Well, personally, I think our approach to the city, or really your approach, because you were leading that, at that point you'd been given the project, we had a hard stop, and now you were kind of, now it was your project, right?
Yeah.
And so I feel like, your approach to the city was, hey, taking the ownership of it. Like, hey, we didn't know.
Yeah.
We had a meeting with the fire marshal out there. We said, hey, look, we weren't trying to, we're not trying to pull a fast one,
right?
Thinking we could do this big renovation without the right permits. And I think that went a long way, right? We got the fire marshal out there. We got the lead building inspector and said, look, we're from Wilmington. We're not from Gaston County. We've not done a project here.
Right.
We're going to own this. I think it also helped that we were the owners and the builders.
That's correct.
So we could say, hey, look, we're not building this for a client. We're not the shady contractor.
Yeah.
We are the owners as well as a GC. And I feel like that relationship, with us owning that, personally, I feel like that went a long way with them being able to say, hey, yeah, you got to do X, Y, and Z, but you can keep going on this scope of work. You can, continue painting or whatever it was while we got the right permits.
That's exactly correct. Because we were on the phone with the fire marshal and the assistant fire marshal all the time, and they did make us do some stuff that was these sheets, and we turned them around right away, and we were on the phone with them. We were communicating, and it was just a bunch of paper stuff that we had to do and paperwork, and so we got it done, and it actually didn't set us back too much. We were able to get going again pretty soon.
Yeah.
It was actually a relatively easy permitting process compared to some other projects that we've had. Once we knew the right thing to do, like you said, we weren't trying to pull a fast one. Once we knew the right thing to do, it actually wasn't so bad.
Just give us the right paper. We'll fill it out. We'll give you what you need, but we just didn't know
Tell me what to do, and I will do exactly that.
I will literally give you whatever you need to do this.
Exactly.
Right? I think that goes to just on the broader spectrum of contracting in general, right?
Yeah.
Construction in general. There's so many things that you could easily let get to you on a day-to-day thing, right? Across all of our projects, we've never had a project. You'll never have a project that's smooth from start to finish, right? I think it's more of how you deal with those challenges, right? How you let it grow you, how you let it, shape you, and how you let it affect your mindset. Because you could have easily said, it could have affected so much more than it did. And it's nope, we're going to figure this out.
Yeah.
every project has challenges.
Yeah, and I would say that the inspectors and the fire marshals, we all ended on really great terms.
Yeah.
Like everybody was really nice to us and kind, and they realized that we weren't a shady contractor and a fly-by-night. Like, I think our final inspections went amazing. Like, especially the HVAC inspection went so good. I remember standing there, and the guy was just saying, "Oh, you guys do such clean work, and this looks so great. I haven't seen quality work like this in a while." And that just felt good. And we build a rapport with these people, and that's really what helps us on our inspections. You still got to do good work, but yeah, just making sure. Yeah.
I mean, on top of that, they were appreciative of the work and the dollars that we're investing into Gastonia, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they, like you said, the fire marshals and the inspectors were like, you've breathed such life back into this building. You know, we're so glad you didn't tear it down. And we're like, no, that we're not going to tear it down. Like land developers, or, you know, if the project made sense for that. But I think it's, you know, a beautiful fit with storage. And again, we have a lot of different sizes at Gastonia, like storage sizes. So we're not like new buildings. When you build ground up, you can make it exactly the size you want.
Yeah.
So you could design the whole site to have 5 storage types, you know, 5x5, 5x10s, 10x10s. But with this site, you know, we have a few 7.5 by 12s, and you know, so we maximize the square footage from an owner standpoint. But then it's just a great fit with these old buildings that were, you know, this building had been added onto probably 5 times at least. I mean, how many times?
So. Yeah, I mean, how
many roof lines were up there?
It had like 19 different roof lines, so
so more than that.
Yeah, who knows how many times it was added on. Apparently, it was like a bank, and it was a drive-through, and the drive-through became part of the building, and then they added onto that. It was like,
they just kept adding onto this thing, and then at the end, it's like, okay, you got this really funky building, but the location,
location,
you know, like again, it's on Franklin Boulevard. It's like it's right there.
You're not going to miss it.
You're not going to miss it,
and it's got 2 billboards right on top.
Yeah, which are grandfathered in. When we bought the building, it had these, like, you can see these billboards like from, I don't even know how far away.
One direction, I think it's like 5 blocks. The other one, I think it's like almost 7 blocks away, because you're at the top of the hill.
Yeah, you see this billboard scream at you, and we saw it. It's like, oh, Sundrop, like when we went there for the first site visit. And so those are grandfathered in. Like, you cannot build those billboards that close to the road anymore, but those are grandfathered in. So, like, yeah, the whole project is just, it had its challenges during construction, but overall we love the project right from the start. So
yeah. Absolutely.
We also had, so with it being a Sundrop bottling plant, there was 3 massive, like one of our bigger construction challenges there was we had 3 massive sugar tanks.
Yeah.
Right? Like these huge tanks.
I think one was water, one was glucose, and one was waste or something like that. Yeah. I don't remember exactly what they were.
That was fun to get those out of there, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was super fun.
That was part of the handoff. Hey, Ryan, we got Gastonia. Oh, by the way, in that back corner over there is 3 massive tanks.
Yeah.
Let's figure out how we're going to get them out.
Let's get them out for as cheap as we can. They were in a 4-foot pit, and we wanted to utilize that square footage for storage. And while we could have just walled that area off, the team was like, how can we get these out? And actually, our demo contractor found somebody who wanted the tanks, and there was discussions of price that we wanted, and we're like, we don't want any money. We just want them out.
Yeah.
Like, get them out safely, and just get them out of here, and that's all we want. So, they had to rent specific trailers and, you know, push these things back and then tilt them under the roof truss, and then they had to drag them out on their side.
Yep.
And load them onto this special trailer and haul them off one by one.
I think we have a picture of it somewhere, but that pitch of where they had to lean it down and get it out. I mean, the picture looks like it's an inch from the roof truss, but I remember them measuring and trying to be like, okay, because it was a question mark of, since they're in a 4-foot pit, like, how do we get them out of here? Because they're stainless steel tanks. I mean, they're huge.
The first one was the hardest one to get out, because after that, you have the maneuverability to kind of move them around. But I think the first one was really difficult. And even when they were dragging them out on the side, the picture of the tank coming out in the garage door opening, and it's like, how much room is that?
It's like a very small sliver on each side, so barely got them out.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome. Unfortunately, we weren't there at the time while it was happening. We saw pictures, and we did a FaceTime with the site superintendent, John Serva. Shout out to John Serva.
Yep.
We just got the pictures in the FaceTime, and I wish I could have been there, but to come back and to see them gone, it's like, and then see that pit. I mean, it was crazy.
Yeah.
And the pit was full of just dirty water and wastewater and sugar, and that was fun to get that
So
all
we
out of there.
had to pump all that out.
Yeah.
So like you said, like one of the thoughts was, from a construction standpoint, it would have been way easier to just literally put up 2 walls and sort of bury these tanks in this cavity, right?
Yeah.
So our acquisition team, we said, hey, let's figure out like how much square footage are we actually losing in net rentable, us being the GCs and being the owner, right? Putting our owner's hat on, looking at that future valuation, looking at that, what's going to drive our NOI numbers. And we came up with a calculation and said, hey, we're losing about, I don't remember off the top of my head, but it was, a decent amount of square footage that we knew we could rent and put storage units there.
Right.
And so we did an internal analysis to say, hey, even if it costs us 20 grand to get these tanks removed, we're going to create 60 to 80 grand easily in future value. So the delta there, like, we're still positive, right?
Right. And it didn't cost us that much because
it didn't cost us that much, but
really we pulled the tanks out and then we filled it in, put some concrete. But you're right. It's like every obstacle, there's basically just apply math. Like what's a number to take that out versus what's the number that it's gonna create as far as the revenue is concerned.
Yeah.
And that's where we always just hit the pause button and say, hey, this is above our pay grade. Let's kick it to acquisitions and the analysts and figure it out. We did the same exact thing in Lexington with the condenser inside.
Yeah. Well, I think just like we talked about, that momentum, getting the train moving, like I feel like from both sides, from Nomad side, from Elm side, that's what has, been so streamlined over the past year, I would say, since you've been on board, is how do we keep that momentum going, right? Like in the middle of a project, we come up with a construction challenge. Hey, here's the dollar amount to move this. We're getting in real time, hey, acquisition team, what's this going to cost? How's this going to affect our value? We have it in the budget, we're all collaborating. I mean, we all have been collaborating, obviously work in the same building, but I feel like that has been so streamlined, right?
Yeah, I think we've always had that. Like, I don't know if we've improved too much on that. Like for a normal, 3 different companies that might have taken, 2 to 3 weeks to turn that around.
Yeah.
I feel like we've always been good about like, hey, this is really important to figure out these numbers and have a decision. Like, I feel like that's something that we've always been really good about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just
absolutely.
If it's a priority to one of us and it's really going to change the end product, everybody's attention goes to that thing and we solve that.
Yeah.
I think that's a big part about like our level 10 meetings, our IDS and that kind of stuff. But that's for a different podcast.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Gastonia turned out amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, if you ask most of the people on our team, like that's one of our favorite assets that we did. It was really, really cool conversion. Just with it being the Sundrop bottling plant, our acquisitions team found a Coke bottling plant that they're underwriting, and so part of me wants to try and make that project work just because it'd be cool to do another one. But I don't think the numbers work on there. So, but yeah, I mean, you go through the building now, and I'd say there's still some areas of the building that are kind of a little funky, right?
Yeah,
a couple of the loading areas are maybe a little bit funky, but I think that's really the beauty of self-storage and of real estate or commercial real estate is, the property is valued on what it can produce, right? So there may be a funky corner and you can tell it's a conversion. Like, we're not trying to hide the fact. We're not trying to make it look like this ground up 4-story brand new building.
Yeah.
I think in some ways we kind of lean into that conversion look, right?
Right. Yeah, because it's hard to do.
Yeah, it's hard to do.
Not everyone's doing it.
And so even though you have some of these funky corners and even though we have some odd unit sizes, like, we can still rent those units and that still drives the NOI, which drives the value of the property.
Yeah.
So we are super bullish on conversions for a lot of those reasons. But, product looks great, dude.
Yeah, we painted the floor, painted the ceiling. I mean, when you walk in it, like, we actually had the guy who installed our garage door motors. He was part of the planning board. And, like, he knew exactly what that building looked like before. And I couldn't even talk to him about the garage door motors because his jaw was open. And he was just walking through the whole facility, just eyes wide, jaw open, just snaking through all the hallways. Yeah. And I was like, hey, man, I want to talk to you about garage doors. We need these certain...
Let's go back over here.
Yeah. They need to be on a timer. And then and he's just like, So, I mean, like, we appreciate it. I hope our investors appreciate it. And the local community definitely got that vibe from watching people walk through that facility.
Yeah, that's a good feeling, right? I mean, it's a good feeling to just take something that's old and, again, like, if you walk in that same door where the first time we walked in, we saw 300, Sundrop soda machines, vending machines. So now you walk in that same door, it's climate controlled, floors are clean, we painted the ceilings. I mean, it's breathtaking. It really looks good. Like as pretty as you can make storage conversions, I'd say Gastonia is as good as it gets.
Yeah.
Personally.
Yeah, it's definitely up there for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the way this project ended up being, I mean, we got about 74,000 square foot, about 500, over 500 units.
Yeah.
There were some like ramps that were about 10 to 12 foot wide for their forklifts and stuff. And so we ended up like, forming up and pouring concrete to reduce everything down to our standard, which is 5 foot wide.
So we could gain net rentable.
Right. So we could gain that net rentable, put a partition there and just maximize the space. That's what we're always looking to do, is maximize how much, net rentable square footage we can get out of the storage.
Yeah. So I think the total building, it was like 70,000 square feet. I think we ended with like 50,000 net rentable.
Okay.
Was the number there.
Yeah. I remember 74,000 being
that was the
footprint, including the mezzanine.
Yeah. And so that was one thing that, I don't think you were there. Were you there on the structural site visit or no?
No.
That was before you as well.
Yeah.
So we went under contract with the building, and then we had brought our engineering team out and our architect team out. And the structural engineer was there because there was a mezzanine, or there's a second floor on a small part of the building. I think we own you know how many units we have up there?
It's not a lot.
50?
I would say, I was going to say 50 to 80.
Yeah, so not a lot of units per the total project, but there was still a decent amount of square footage that we wanted to utilize. So our structural engineer came out, and it was actually funny. It was not funny. It was not that great, but he needed to see what was underneath the drywall on the second floor there. So he went into a corner, and then he started just beating the drywall out, like making a hole. And then the owner, the owner wasn't there, but his general manager came over, and he was like, what are you guys doing? And so we ended up going to talk to him and like, hey, I'm so sorry. Like, we didn't know he was going to go tear a hole in their ceiling. And we were like, hey, clean up your mess. And then I said, look, we'll pay to fix this. He wasn't upset. I mean, I wish we had said, hey, we need to look in your ceiling. Can we tear a hole in your ceiling? He was a little bit
I can see how that's off-putting. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, we worked through that, and I said, look, dude, whatever it costs, I'll get the guy. We'll call the guy. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for that to happen. But that was one of the things that we had early on, is we had a structural engineer come out and say, because storage load requirements are 125 pounds per square foot, which is pretty high rated.
Yeah.
So our floors have to be rated pretty high, because apparently the code thinks that people could store a bunch of engine blocks or a bunch of brick. Yeah. In a 10 by 10 on a second floor. And so it's got to be rated for whatever. Yeah. So we had to make sure that our floor load was rated enough for that, and it was, luckily. So we didn't have that issue. But that was another thing that was 50 units on a project that size is going to sway the underwriting by a decent amount.
Yeah,
that's a lot of square footage up there. We fit a lot of smaller units up there, and those typically rent for more. So during our acquisition time, I'd say that was probably one of the things that we kind of needed to put to bed and to really check off from an ownership standpoint. And then as well as a construction standpoint, because if the floor loads didn't meet the requirements, we could have maybe beefed them up, added some beams or stuff. But
underframe them, something like that.
Yeah, but what's the cost, right? It's like, hey, we're trying to work all these things at the same time. We're working construction budget numbers. We're working, what's the property going to be worth? Yeah. How many units does that add? So there's so many things moving at that time of,
Yeah.
There's a lot moving on an acquisition for a new site.
Structurally underframing or reinforcing anything is not cheap. So you need to know that. Yeah. And when you said that reminded me of my first walk there. I had the structural plans, and I went over to the mezzanine, the second floor. And I'm looking at it, and it calls out for a freight elevator to fit in the existing hole in the slab. Now, I don't know what that hole in the slab was for, but I know that the elevator needed 7 by 12 opening, and the opening was 4 by 4. And it's calling out for it to go right in that spot. Yeah. So I called, it was either you or John, and I'm like, hey, is there something I don't know? Because that's not even...
Is this the right hole that I'm looking at? Am I reading these upside down?
This is not even close. Who thinks what is going to fit where? So, we ended up having to move it to that diamond plate section. So there was a patch done in the slab where there's diamond plate and some joists and stuff. And that was almost the exact size we needed. So we just slid it over 10 feet, and we used that hole in the slab.
I don't know what happened there. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know how, again, it was that same site visit where we tore a hole in the ceiling
Yeah.
without telling the owners. And so I don't know what happened there, because you had asked me, you're like, hey, is this like, what happened? And I
Yeah.
was like, I don't remember. Like, I thought that opening was bigger. You're like, dude, it's 4x4. Like, I got my tape measure
Yeah.
out. And I'm like, well, that's not
I
going to
literally
work.
sent pictures. I'm like, am I crazy? Because I saw
Yeah.
because I looked at the demo plan and it didn't say to demo out a part of it and make it larger into, because once you start demoing something structurally, you have to reinforce it.
Yep.
And there's nothing on the plans. The plans just show it being like an 8x14 hole. I'm like, that's not what that is, guys.
So a 4x4 elevator, you can fit like a lamp. Right?
Yeah.
Our kids, they
Your
can put one
groceries.
lamp at a time
Yeah.
in upstairs.
Yeah, a couple eggs, some milk. Yeah, that's about it. So
we moved. So yeah, we moved the elevator, or it's not an elevator, it's a freight.
yeah, freight lift.
Freight lift. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is basically passengers don't ride in it. So elevators are incredibly costly.
Yes.
Right. So we put one in at Lexington. We had to put in the right elevator there because all of our units were upstairs. Right.
Yeah.
And so during due diligence and during this unpacking of the upstairs at Gastonia, we were looking at the cost to do a full elevator, which would be great. It's a much nicer product.
Yeah.
But it comes to a cost, right? And if there's only, if it's only serving 50 units upstairs, we had to weigh that out.
Right. Yeah. I mean, your freight elevator, with the freight elevator, depending on the size, of course, and the exact type, with the freight elevator and the drywall and the metal studs and the shafts, like you're looking roughly around 70,000. Like a personnel elevator is your high 200s, maybe 280, maybe almost 300. It depends on how many floors you're going.
Which sounds crazy. It's like, how is it that much more? But we
Yeah.
just pulled the data, right? I mean,
Yeah, we pulled the
there's
data.
so many different layers that go into an elevator. People think it's just an elevator.
So the elevator guy, when I called him the very first time for Lexington, I said, hey, what's the price of the elevator? He's like, you're looking at roughly like 130,000, but take that number and double it, and that's what you're going to pay for your pit, your shaft, if you have to do a roof, your sump pump, your fire rated walls, all that kind of stuff, like your electrical, your supplemental electrical.
Yep.
And I was like, no way. Like, there's no way.
I can do it cheaper than
Yeah,
that.
and man, he was close. It was really, really close.
Yeah.
So that guy, and that's what he does for a living. That's all he
Yeah.
does. So he knew what he was talking about. But it just feels good to have someone else say, yeah, that's roughly what it costs. And when it does cost that, it's like, okay, we didn't overpay.
Yeah.
That's right in line.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think for that project, the freight elevator makes so much sense because it's like there's so much square footage on the ground level to rent up first.
Yeah.
And if people want discounted units or they want to be upstairs for some reason, we have the means to.
The stairs
to
are
make
really
that happen.
close, right? So you basically
there.
you put your stuff in the freight elevator. We have one at our facility in Wilmington.
Yeah.
And the upstairs is fully leased. So again, we've rented those units last, or we discount them, slightly
Yeah.
for customers for the inconvenience. But there was already a staircase relatively close, so you put your stuff in, you push up, and then you kind of walk around and you meet your stuff upstairs.
Yeah.
But had you done a freight elevator before?
No,
project?
that was my first one. Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah, it was a learning experience. Yeah. Yeah, the company we used was out of California, different time zones, and apparently different ideas on how to do certain things. And so, yeah, again, there was some of it was on the design team, not only the wrong hole in the building, but the height to span. So, some elevators are special order, and there's basically a surface mounted mast that goes up, and once you go higher than 10 or 12 foot, it's a special order and that kind of stuff. And so that was missed on the plans, and we had to get that out and then return the old one and pay for shipping and all that stuff. So yeah, we had a lot of opportunities to really learn a lot there about that freight elevator. Yeah, that one will stick with me for life.
Yeah. Well, I think you are a very detailed person, right? Which is
Thank you.
It's amazing, right?
Sometimes
amazing.
it's a hindrance, but yeah.
No, it's fantastic because if you've ever seen an elevator submittal, they send you a booklet of, hey, here's the plans for the elevator, and it's thorough.
Yeah.
I mean, they're overwhelming, right? If you don't know how to read plans, or even for an experienced plan reader, they're very overwhelming. And it's very, you've got all these side views, you've got the weight structural detail views, you've got opening views, you've got lentil views, you've got everything, right?
The power.
You've got power
from the
diagrams.
building, how the power is going to interact with the elevator itself. If there's
Yeah.
a transformer, are they speaking the same power language?
Yeah. So like I feel like that was, when you were tackling that, even though it was your first one, I remember you reviewing every submittal, right?
Yeah.
And you're reviewing all that. So, typically our architects and engineers are reviewing it as well, but it's nice for us to put our eyes on it. And, it's easier said than done. It's like, hey, can you review the submittal? Somebody might just breeze through it. Yeah, it looks pretty good.
Yeah.
But you actually took the time to dive in and say like, okay, we're off here. And you uncovered, like you said, some of those things like that were not right. And it was nobody's fault specifically, I would say, but it's just a conversion, right?
Yeah. Things change, and, when things change, it's got a cascading effect. You change one thing, well, that changes that, and then that, and then that. And it's like, you got to make sure all those pieces are picked up. You got to sit there and visualize, like, I know we just changed this one thing, but, did that just change the egress path? And if it did change the egress path, where's the closest door? Did we change that door? Is it less than 250 feet?
Yeah.
You taking this door and moving it that way, now you have to go around all these units. Like, you got to, think about the egress path. And it's like, you'd never think just switching a door out this way or that way would matter. But
that's what we had to do. Remember, we had to move the units and the stairwell because we had them when you came up the stairs. They were on the right side, but what did we miss our egress by? It was 5 feet.
No, it was less. It was less. It was like 2 feet.
We couldn't. So it was the path of egress because we changed the elevator where it got out of was less than 2 feet, and so we had to
take our units so that as you turn the corner, you had to go around the units and turn the corner. We took those units, we put them on the far side, so as you came around the corner around the concrete wall, you could just make that quick turn and come down.
And those were 5x5s.
Yep.
So we gained basically 5 feet.
Yes. It was under 5 foot. It was like 2.5 feet. Yeah. That's all that we had to do.
Yeah.
And that takes being on the site and looking at it, and like it seems so obvious, like when you look at the plans, but it took being on site and then visualizing like where can we shave 2 feet?
Yeah. But the last thing on that, like the reason I remember we changed that was because we were able to get, I think, 1 or 2 more units upstairs.
Yeah.
And the way it was originally designed, we saw the plans early on and we said, yeah, I think that's good. I think that's going to flow right. And then being on site, getting further along the line, it's like, this is funky. Like this doesn't work here. If we change it to this way, we can add 2 more units here. But then of course that relayed into, well, we've got to move these 5x5s. Yeah. But at the end of the day, like those are some of those quick decisions where we said, hey, we got the team involved. And I think those 5x5s weren't up yet, right? So,
they weren't.
We were able to connect with the steel guys and said, hey, put them on this wall. They're like, all right, sweet.
Yeah, and that was one of the first things that I connected with. Luckily, I was there when ProSteel started installing, and there was a guy that on the installation team that I befriended, and him and I were really cool, and I just couldn't believe how fast they were working. So I sparked up with a conversation with him, like just talking about how fast they work, and like, and how often he does like this. That's all they do.
Yeah.
And so,
oh my gosh.
And then we walked upstairs, and that's when we relayed the information to him, and like then once we said that, like I knew it was gonna get done right.
Yeah.
And I could it's just nice to talk with those guys, and like, you can tell when someone understands what you're saying, and this guy got it. He's like, I know exactly what you're saying. Okay, I'll put him over there. Done deal.
That's a good feeling.
Didn't have to worry about it.
Yeah, that's a good feeling.
Yeah, it really is.
It'd be nice if the whole project was like that, right? You go over it one time with everyone, the subs, everybody, and like, hey, you guys got this?
Yeah.
I'll see you in a couple months.
It is funny though, like sometimes you get a good feeling and a bad, like when you explain something and you're explaining like 2 or 3 times and you're looking at the guy,
you see
and
the blank stare.
There's a little bit of this going on. It's like, man, I need to pay attention to this. But then you just have other contractors, like you explain one thing and they give in their input and they're like, okay, if we do this, then you just get this feeling. It's like, you know what? He's a pro. I'm just going to let them do what they do.
Yeah.
They know what my end goal is, and they're going to make it happen. Other guys, you're like, this is how you do it. And it's just like,
I'd say that's a gut feeling.
Yes.
After being in construction, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to describe that look.
Yeah.
I know exactly the look. I've had that look so many times of like good and bad, right? It's hard to describe that look to somebody who's not in construction. And be like, sometimes you can just look at this guy and you know that it's not going to be done right. Yeah. But then on top of that, like we've started to, not started, but I feel like we've started to build really good relationships with our subs and their lead guys. And so now I would almost say they kind of are anticipating. They're like, oh, I know Ryan's going to want it this way, or I know Levi's going to want to see that. And that goes a long ways.
And not only that, like you get to know which foreman and which like which area they're gonna like focus on and like
Yep.
absolutely crush it, and then other areas you're like, yeah, that guy usually he doesn't caulk the seams,
Yep.
like like we got to tell him to do that,
Yep.
So I feel like it's a gut feeling and time in the game,
Yeah, it's hard to describe that. So.
Yeah. Overall, Gastonia, an amazing project.
Yep.
So like, just give me a win recap because there was full of wins, right? So
Win recap. Okay.
as an owner and investor, watching the construction team go, like I know there was a lot of things that went really well, and
Yep.
there were some hiccups. So like, what do you think? Because I always feel like anytime you have a hiccup, there's usually a win out of it. So
Yeah.
like, so as like an outsider looking in,
Yeah.
what were some win recaps from the whole spectrum?
Yeah, that we just covered a lot, right?
Yeah.
I'd say win recaps was like definitely from the initial site walk, just seeing the potential there, right? And really putting our creative hats on, I think was a win and kind of showed our edge a little bit of kind of the products we can look at and see from an ownership standpoint.
Yeah.
Throwing you into the fire and watching you just absolutely grind it out, and then not only grind it and crush it, but then come out on the other side with, okay, we did our postmortem there, and it was like, postmortems is after the project's done, final bills have been paid, we have to sit down and say, all right, what went right, what went wrong, how can we improve, and what do we need to implement on our next projects, right? A lot of good stuff came out of the postmortem there.
Which we were on budget.
Which we were on budget with, and that was a very challenging project to get. I mean, just with all the things. I mean, from sugar tanks to, relocating the elevator and reinforcing the shaft.
Yeah.
We had water that we had to solve in the back because we had groundwater coming in the building, so we had to reshape that. Our roof was incredibly challenging. I mean, 19 different roof pitches on this thing. So, like, they had added on to this however many times, maybe 19 times. I don't know.
Who knows? Yeah.
But 19 different roof pitches, like it takes skilled roofers to do that, and it takes skilled people to oversee roofers to do that. The mezzanine turned out great. It was there were a lot of challenges there, but we got really good square footage there. I mean, I'm trying to think. It feels like there's so many wins. Like I'm thinking of the not losses, but the opportunities where we learned, and that list is even greater, I would say.
Yeah, I would say like my first freight elevator, that was really cool for me to do, and I think it's been a while since Elm Builders has done that in general.
It has,
years.
2016 was the last time.
Yeah.
So it'd been
the billboards.
Yep.
I don't think that have we ever done billboards before?
We never have.
That's a win.
That was
absolutely. And my wife designed them, so that was really cool to see that like coming down the road. I sent her a picture once we finally pulled over, and I sent her a picture from far away and then up on the roof.
Yeah,
so,
we got a selfie. Me, Pops, and Hannah got a selfie on the roof. And it was like, hey, first billboard. It was sick.
It was awesome.
They were so cool, and it was a great experience. I mean, Hannah killed the design there, and I think really you can see city storage, you can see self storage like from so far away. So like huge win.
That was a huge win. Yeah. Being on budget was really great.
Yeah.
Learning permitting process, I think that was a huge win, and things that we implemented from there. Yeah, and then just the final product. I mean, I love the location. I love the final product. Wish I could have invested in that one, but I came out a little bit too late. It was already closed out, and I mean, I just think it's a win for so many people.
Opportunity. Don't
yeah,
worry.
yeah. It was just a great project overall, and it's just nice to get my feet wet in that one. And that one will always hold a special place in my heart because it was my first like start to finish
Trial by fire.
Yeah, it really was, and I was just so grateful to have that opportunity. Like really, like I was very grateful to have such a challenging but great project.
Yeah.
To take on with the team, and so that was awesome.
Yeah, you killed it, dude. I mean, the whole Elm team did, but I say trial by fire because it was truly that. Like, hey, here's this project, and not only did you come out on top, but like the product is amazing. As the owners, we're leasing up there. It's a crown jewel for us. I mean, it's been a cool project from start to finish. From the first time we saw it, the 300 vending machines, to what it is now
Yeah.
is just spectacular.
And I have to give a shout out to John Server because he was running
Yes.
3 projects,
Yes.
and one of them was Gastonia. And every time I called him, it wasn't very close to his house or his other project. And every time I called him, I said, "Hey, I need you there for something." He was always there.
Yeah.
And not only was he there, but he was there early. Like
Yeah.
I'd be like, "Hey, at 7:00, 7 in the morning, some guy's gonna be there." I get a text from him at 5:30 in the morning, like showing me the outside of the building and how. So
Yeah.
couldn't have done it without you, John. So shout out to you. Yeah, he's especially with the permit shutdown. Like,
Yep.
when he communicated to those officials and those inspectors of like what our plan was moving forward,
Yep.
and he was constantly following up with them about what we can do next. Yeah, he kept the ball rolling. So it takes a massive team to do this.
Yeah.
So there's just so many people out there that we don't have the time to mention, but had to give John a shout out.
I mean, I will absolutely shout out John as well. So John and I were working side by side every day before you came on board. So John and I are very close, and yeah, from the whole permitting shutdown, like he has a fantastic way of connecting with inspectors and really just relaying who we are, from an ownership standpoint, from a GC standpoint, and yeah, he was doing a lot at that time before we brought you on. So we'd had just massive amounts of scale at Nomad Capital, which was very exciting. And so Elm Builders was just really drinking from a fire hose, trying to get projects online, trying to get you up to speed, trying to build out systems. It was a little chaotic, but at the end of the day, we have great assets, and it took a minute there, but we were very excited to get you on board. John and I were like, "Hey, we're excited to get Ryan on board."
Yeah.
And then of course now we have Cameron, and we've really scaled out the team, and it's just been huge. So
Yeah. It's crazy because I don't even do that much project management anymore.
Yeah.
It's like Cameron and John now.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
yeah. So even things that have evolved since Gastonia, they've evolved even more.
Yeah.
And we're taking on a new shape. So
Which is exciting.
It
I think
is.
we say it all the time. It's like we're just getting started
yeah.
on all fronts. And
Yeah.
I feel like we're just getting started with the right structure, with the right team in place to just actually, really start operating really, really efficiently.
Yeah, I feel like we're being intentional but not overdoing it. We're
Yeah.
not taking on all these massive projects and taking bites that are too big. It's like we are constantly doing, looking back and improving. Like
100%.
and if you just keep doing and you work in the business, not on the business, I think that could be pretty detrimental, and that's what we're taking the right size bites.
Consistency.
That's right.
It's dangerous.
It is.
Here we are.
Well, thanks for watching. That was Season 2, Episode 9, Deep Dive into Gastonia. Levi Hemingway, the owner, co-founder, Nomad Capital, old project manager, owner, CFO of
Yeah.
Elm Builders. What was your title?
Yeah, I don't know what my title was at Elm Builders. Firefighter,
Therapist.
babysitter, and therapist. Yeah, my title was kind of all things construction before Ryan came on.
Yeah.
But this has been awesome, dude. I've been hoping they've asked me or would ask me to come onto the podcast. So it's a dream come true for me, and I hope to be asked back again. But this was fun doing a deep dive, and
Yeah, I mean, your truck does say Elm Builders on it, and
It's true.
and your day-to-day is pretty limited on the Elm Builder side. It's not zero, but
Yeah.
it's it used to be probably what, like 90%, 80%,
Absolutely.
and now it's 10 to 15% of your
Absolutely.
day and week.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's just, it's putting the right people in the right seats, and Ryan is the right person, in the right seat. And my time in Elm has drastically changed, which has given me more freedom and Nomad to do what needs to happen there, and to free me up across the board. So
I can tell you miss it though.
I do miss it. Yeah, I love getting my boots dirty. I love construction. It's just something cool about like seeing the progress, right? It's like you can actually smell the paint. You can smell the concrete, There's just something about construction that, I don't know, it's not for everybody, and it's incredibly challenging, but if it's for you, then you can't, it's hard to describe it. It's fun to see these projects come to life, to see the transformation, and I love construction.
So, slightly off topic. I know this is a Gastonia deep dive, but I was asked this the other day, and I'm curious what your answer is. What is your favorite site walk from inception to finish, all the ones in the middle? My favorite was demo, because after demo's done, you do that walk after, and you can actually see the, the clean slate, and like, oh, this wall, we can, it's less about thinking as like a theory.
Yeah.
Now there's a lot that's exposed and we can solve and we can do. I love that like new project we're doing. We're not thinking anymore. Like I can actually order, the drywall. I can order the HVAC. Like that for me is my favorite. Like what out of all those walks from start to finish, which one's your favorite?
I love the demo. I love the demo walk for sure. The less like exciting walk for me is the like right before we start putting the finishes in and all of our mechanicals are done. Yeah. Like for me, it's not as glamorous and you have all the guts and the systems of these buildings, but I know from having experience as a superintendent how much work it is to get the systems and the guts in of these buildings that anytime I go do a walk and I see the mechanicals in place, I see wires pulled, home runs, I see plumbing vents in, that to me is a huge milestone because again, like, when I started in construction, I was a superintendent for residential projects, and just to be able to get to where we could sheetrock was a tremendous amount of work. So like I would have a huge sigh of relief as a superintendent, and so I sort of have that sigh of relief for the team because I know how much work, whether it was I know how much work it was to get to that point. So I like that part too.
Yeah, I do love that milestone where it's like mechanical final inspections pass, electrical final inspections pass. It's nice. It really is.
It's a good feeling. It's a lot of work to get there.
It is, yeah. And you got to hit that milestone on every project. And we hit it on Gastonia, and we close that one out.
Yep,
so
absolutely.
We will close out this podcast, Season 2, Episode 9. Levi Hemingway, thanks for joining me.
Thank you.